Video 3. So, I wanted to talk about some of my personal life a little bit. This is going on YouTube. And so, this is me when I was a little kid. And that is my dog, or our dog. It's the first family pet we ever had. Just trying to remember what his name was. Can't remember, but he was like the beautifulest dog you could ever imagine. So I grew up with animals. That was the first dog. We've had many dogs in our family since then. And this is our horse, and that's my dad holding the horse. So that is a photo of our horse Lady, and her racing name was Mariner's Image. And my parents had this racehorse and they used to race her. I think the best she ever came was third. And they were just really into it. My dad loves gambling and horses and all that kind of stuff. And so I grew up with this horse who used to come in our backyard to get her feet, put new shoes on and get her nails sort of all clipped and that, all cut off with the farrier. And the farrier would come over our backyard and do it in the backyard. And then my dad would feed her in the backyard, walk around, give her some molasses, and let me sit on the back. So I grew up with a racehorse as a pet. Almost like a dog, because my dad would just put her in the backyard for a while. And you imagine it like back in the day. It's only a 1/4 acre block, and my dad put a horse in the backyard. Anyhow, and this is stumpy-tailed cattle dogs. So my dad and mum used to breed stumpy-tailed cattle dogs. So what happened was I ended up with this dog named Lightning, and she was just a normal cattle dog, blue cattle dog. And she bred with another dog, and we don't know who. And then she ended up having stumpy-tailed cattle dogs, and then my parents actually got into breeding them. So she had like about 2 or 3 litters of stumpy-tailed cattle dogs, and some of them had tails and some of them were stumpy-tail, born that way, so they're not cut off. And quite a few of them went to different families around the area who had farms and whatnot. So I've grown up with lots of puppies and things like animals in my life, even kittens. Like I had 2 lots of pregnant cats and about 3 or 4 lots of kittens from them over the lifetime. So I've always grown up with animals. And I think it's a good experience to grow up with animals because your children learn compassion, they learn kindness, and they learn that intuition that you have with the animal and the animal has with you, and getting to familiarise yourself with being kind and gentle to an animal, what you should and shouldn't do as a kid. I think it's all like a healthy experience for children to have animals, and I think having that in my life was pretty rad, pretty cool, and I'm very grateful that my parents allowed me to have animals and pets because I just loved it. And then I'd go and visit family up in Townsville, and they lived on a farm, so they had ducks, geese, horses, like a lot of horses. My cousin was into horse riding, so she used to saddle the horse up for me and let me ride her pony around. So I rode a few different horses and stuff when I was younger, including our racehorse, which my dad would hold on with the reins because if you lean over on the horse, it'll think it's in a race. So he kept her on the reins while I walked around on the back of her. So that was pretty cool, pretty dangerous, living on the edge. I did get bucked off and break my arm once. It did happen. Dad was like, get off the horse, she's getting annoyed. And I'm like, no, I want to stay on her. And then next minute, she bucked me off. Should have listened to Dad because I ended up with a broken arm and leg. And I got a broken arm and leg at the same time. One was from the horse, and then it happened again later. Dad was building a chook pen and he used a real door for the actual door of the chook pen because he made like a frame and everything. And he said, don't touch that, I'm just leaving that lean, I've got to go get something. I was like, okay. And when you tell a little kid not to touch something, what are they going to do? So anyways, I went and touched it, and it started falling on me, and I ran as fast as I could back this way, and the door's coming back on me like this. And it got me and it pushed me to the floor, and there was a tree root on the ground. It actually broke my leg, it snapped my leg in two. So I was walking around for about 2 weeks before my parents actually wondered why I was crying at any sudden moves with a broken arm and a broken leg, and they didn't catch on for about 2 weeks because I wasn't like, it wasn't an obvious break, but it was a break right through. So then there's photos of me playing, and I've got a cast on my leg and a cast on my arm. I think my sisters must have all those photos or something, because Mum had them all and they just went disappearing. So, yeah, there's all that memory going on there. And I just think kids and pets are the best. We had chooks when I was younger. Used to go in and pat the chooks, collect eggs. It's just like a real good learning experience for a child to have. And if I have children, like, I want to have chooks and all that sort of stuff for them to learn to collect the eggs and where the eggs come from, and pat the chooks and make friends with the ducks and make friends with the horse. And like, I think, like, even if I didn't personally have them in my own yard, I'd want to take them to like some sort of animal enclosure where they let the animals roam free and have a good life, but you can still take your kids to go see all the animals, because I just think that's such a good experience for children. It just, yeah, like, for instance, later on in life, the horse played a role, because I ended up dating a girl who had a horse, and our actual dates or time together would consist of going to collect horse poo in bags. Yeah, that's right, dates collecting horse poo. Thing you should do when you think you're in love. No, but like, to me, because I'd had a horse as a young person, doing that and looking after the horse together with someone, like a friend or someone close to me or someone I was romantically involved with, was nothing. Like, it was... And I used to go and clean her horse for her with a brush and saddle the horse up for her, and, you know, I used to do all those sorts of things and ride the horse. I think I rode the horse once. But yeah, like, so having animals at a young age is good in case the people that you're with later in life have them, but it just makes you so much more well-rounded as a person, you know. You don't want to have someone that just is not going to change the baby's nappy. Like, I think it prepares you for things like that, if you get what I'm trying to say. Like, you're not so queasy in the stomach, and you're not going to be scared of all those kinds of things, because when you have animals, you experience all that kind of stuff, and cleaning up after them is part and parcel of having an animal. And I think it's so healthy to know that and have that in your life. And not to mention, like, the unconditional love that you get back from a dog or a cat or a mouse or a bird or just anything like that. This is something the child can connect with. Is so good for their learning. Particularly kids that have, like, autism and stuff like that. Can be good for that kind of thing, because they connect with the animal. Like, for instance, I had a cat and she fell pregnant twice. The first time I sold the litter of cats, and that litter of cats, were very special, you know. I really realised that how special it was. And I screened the people that messaged me for an animal, and I picked out the specific one that had a child with autism, and I picked out the cat that was going to that kid. Handpicked it because the cat had had a traumatic event happen to it, and ever since that she got her head stuck in a catalytic converter, funnily enough, and the fire brigade had to come and get her out. It actually made 7 news and on Facebook, and so yeah, the cat got saved, and she became a different kind of cat after that. And I thought, oh, she's going to be so good with someone who had autism. And it just so happened that at a later date, when the kitten was ready to go, and a couple of weeks later, someone messaged me and said, my son's autistic, I'm looking for an animal for him. I went, I have the perfect cat for you. Like, she will be... And she sent me photos of them together, and they were snuggling just perfect. And I thought, oh, I knew that would be the best match. So I think when your kids have learning disabilities and stuff like that, sometimes they can't feel like they can't connect to another human. But having an animal, they can have a different sort of connection. You know, there doesn't have to be any verbalization. For instance, if they have a stutter or some sort of speech problem, or they don't speak at all, I think an animal can be good for them to learn that. Yeah, I think animals are a lot of work. They are costly, but what you get back from them in your life fulfills it so much more, like tenfold. So I think that having an animal is definitely a plus to have in your life. And just coming home even from a really rough day at work and you see your cat or your dog, you know, it's just a companion, someone you don't have to talk to. They just cuddle you, like and they're excited when you get home, like whether it be for food or not, who knows, but like they're excited when you get home, particularly a dog. And it's like, you can't get that from a person. So I think animals give us so much more back in the life, and when you grow up with them, it's just such a nice feeling. And when you go out in society, you have more compassion for the animals if you've grown up with animals too. Not always the case, but like generally. Generalization again, but like it's true. So I've had like family with birds and all sorts of things, and I've just made friends with them over the years. I've even had a pet perch. I caught a perch from the spillway and we took it home, and it was like my pet for a while. About 3 months I kept him. And Percy the Perch was his name. I used to have his name on the tank. And I'd feed it like mealworms, and I'd just drop the mealworm in like that, and they'd just jump up the top of the water. And it was just so cool to watch, having a perch as a pet, like, because they're such big fish when they grow up. But yeah, it was kind of cool because I caught him from the spillway and then took him home for a while, and yeah. Unfortunately, I would have liked to have released him at the spillway, but it didn't quite happen like that. But he was a beautiful fish, and I had like a little bit of a bond with him, even though it was a fish in a tank. I know it sounds silly, but like they get their own little personality. They rely on you for food. You can train them to do tricks and stuff. It's just cool, you know, like, yeah, I really enjoyed having pets of all sorts. My brother-in-law, when I was younger, about 12, the block of land that they bought to build their house on at the back of Redbank Plains had scorpions in the ground naturally. So he caught like a bunch of scorpions from the backyard and had them all in a tank. So when I was younger, and we actually lived with them for a while in the house after it was built, we had pet scorpions. So that was pretty cool. And he'd like show me him feeding them and stuff like that. So yeah, it's just interesting, something different, you know. Yeah, and then I think he just released them all in the backyard one day when he'd had enough of them. Yeah, I've had like goldfish. I learnt how to not pick them up and drop them in a bucket because otherwise they'd die. So yeah, I've had to learn the hard way about a few different things about having animals and stuff like that, and what you should and shouldn't do. But I think growing up with them really gives you another perspective. It helps hone and develop your intuition. And there's nothing like the unconditional love of an animal at the end of the day, or whether you have a bond with them to connect and communicate. And I think connecting and communication is very undervalued and underrated in life. And I think sometimes you can't get that from another human. So having that connection and that communication with an animal, to be kind and just to it and compassionate with it, I think that's a very important connection for children to develop. And yeah, I think it was an important connection for me in my life. And I know a lot of other people where they just love animals more than they love humans, and I really do understand that. I really understand that quite a lot. So yeah, that's my views on growing up with animals.